of a parent that is not giving your children fish but teaching them how to fish. It takes resources, courage, and sacrifice to educate a child. The modern hustle and bustle of life, coupled with technological advancement and information overload, makes it challenging in the quest to be effective parents. You should consider yourselves achievers on this milestone of graduating your children. Parenting is a continuous process, and your journey of parenting has a long way to go. These young men and women will need to have wives after here. Your intervention in their quest for the next step in life will be very paramount. Modern parenting is a puzzle. The interaction between parents and children is increasingly shrinking due to the career advancement challenges. House helps know more about our children than we do know them. I therefore thank you and congratulate you for achieving this milestone. To all graduates, I'm aware that diploma in law and the postgraduate diploma in legal practice is not a smooth ride. We all passed there. I say to you, congratulations. It takes commitment, hard work, and discipline to reach this moment. The legal profession is honorable, and this in turn raises the stakes. There are people that never give the profession a thought for fear of failing to meet the high standards expected, while for those who make the bold choice to pursue the profession or do not make it to the finishing line. Your presence here today is testimony that you have been tried, tested, and found worthy of the professional crown. However, this is just the beginning of your professional journey. All that you have achieved thus far can easily be likened to a preliminary step to successfully answering the noble call. For the bar course graduates, after your graduation, you will be required to go through the process of enrollment before you can be fully accorded the honor of a practicing advocate of the High Court of Uganda and all courts subordinate and superior thereto. Today, I want to emphasize ethics. I was requested by the director to talk about ethics. Today, I want to highlight the ethics, and I will tailor it. As you heard, I was in academics, so I'll be a little bit academic, and I will trace it in what we call generations. So I will talk about ethics and tailor it to generations. So let me look at the legal profession through generations. During the colonial period, we had two legal regimes in the country. There was the traditional legal regime, which was based on cultural practices in the country, and the colonial regime based on the 1902 Order in Council or the reception clauses. The general behavior of the legal professionals was a replica of the British system of behaviors, and court decorum was fundamentally British. There were few Ugandan-born lawyers at the time before independence. That is how we inherited the wigs and the gowns that grace today's courtrooms. The respect for judicial officers by the advocates and the public was unequivocal. The respect of senior advocates by the junior ones was beyond reproach. The public servants of the early post-colonial governments still had the ethical attributes of colonial government and were working for the common good. Self-centeredness was rare. It was rare to hear of accusations of corruption in the court system. Some of the judicial officers of the time were still from Britain and others from the Commonwealth. Backlog in the court system was an alien word. Public servants were satisfied with the little earnings that were coming their way. It was common to find a public servant retiring without amassing wealth. Lawyers prepared very well for every case amidst few legal resources for reference. Clients rarely complained of their lawyers taking legal fees with no effective representation. The law counsel at the time was almost redundant in terms of disciplinary matters before it. This period is sometimes referred to as the golden period in Uganda. What has changed? Studies from the West can provide some insights into what has changed in terms of ethics. People who were born in America, I will use there was a professor in Harvard. When I was in the university, I was trying to replicate his studies here, but when I joined Judicial, I think I abandoned the study. If you read the books, for example, by Peterson James, he traces generations in the West. So people who were born in America and Europe during the Great Depression became of age in the 1950s, from when the civil rights movement had begun. That is the time of Martin Luther King, those of you who have tried to trace the civil rights movement. That was the height of colonialism in Uganda and the agitation for independence by our local people here. That generation had learned values associated with self-sacrifice. The deprivations of the Depression had taught that generation to work hard, to live frugally, and to cherish family and community ties. Loyalty to institutions, traditional religious faith, and other common bonds were what the generations considered to be the cultural foundations of their countries. The Second World War had taught them lifelong lessons of uprightness and the sanctity of life. This generation was referred to in the US as the baby boomers. In Uganda, this generation had been exposed to World War and had started understanding concepts like human rights and self-determination. It is this generation that came into colonies, including Uganda, as governors. These are the values we shared and inherited from the colonial government. There was only one TV channel called UTV and one radio called Radio Uganda. It was easy to control information to the public. Everyone watched the same TV and listened to the same radio. Once in a while, elites used to listen to BBC, Voice of America, and Deutsche Welle. The generation that followed this very generation I'm talking about, that is the generation that followed the baby boomers, is popularly referred to as Generation X. I'm sure you have heard of that term. Generation X is the demographic cohort preceding the millennials, and researchers and popular media use the mid-term late 1960s as the starting birth years, and the late 1970s and early 1980s as the ending birth years, with the generation being generally defined by people born from 1965 to 1980. As children of the 1970s and 1980s, this was the first time of shifting society values. Generation Xers were sometimes called the latchatory generation, an image spawning from children returning to an empty home and needing to use the door key due to reduced adult supervision compared to previous generation. This time saw increased divorce rates and increased maternal participation in the workforce prior to the widespread availability of child care options outside the home. At this time, when the economies recovered from the economic depression and the world wars, there was increased demand for labor force. Both parents started working and the children began seeing some neglect. They were always at home alone. Both mother and father struggled to go and work. The cultural stronghold that used to bind families together crumbled. Children grew up with no care and close parenting from parents. This situation is not different from Uganda. In Uganda, the rise of gender movements in the late 1980s, followed by the advent of women empowerment by the government, saw a rise in women workforce. Both husband and wife began focusing on their careers. Housemaids started taking care of our children and became the role models for the growing children. New TV channels started emerging. Cable television channels like DSTV proliferated, different worldwide programs. Radio channels proliferated, and the internet emerged as one of the sources of information. The information flow became uncontrollable. The TV became the caretaker of our children. The moral degeneration roller coaster began to roll. The generation following X is referred to as Generation Y, and that is your generation. Researchers and popular media use the early years 1980 as the starting birth years, and the mid-1990s and early 2000s and the ending birth years, with the generation typically being defined as people born from 1981 to 1996. They are sometimes referred to as millennials. This is a generation across the globe that has postponed marriage. Millennials were born at a time of declining fertility rates around the world and are having fewer children than their predecessors. Those in developing nations will continue to constitute the bulk of global population growth. In Uganda, they are producing an average of 2 to 4 children. In the developing world, younger people of the 2010s were less inclined to have marriage compared to their predecessors when they were at the same age. In the West, they are less likely to be religious than their predecessors, but they may identify themselves as spiritual. They prefer watching Premier League on Sunday than going to church. They defy traditional religion and prefer discotheque type of prayer. They are the internet generation. Millennials across the world have suffered significant economic disruptions since starting their working lives. Many faced high levels of youth unemployment during the early years in the labor market in the wake of Great Recession. If you remember the US subprime mortgage scandals that led to the Depression, and suffered another recession in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Psychologist, for example, Ginny Twenge, described millennials as Generation Me. So that is how you are described by academicians. Don't take, there is no pun intended. Now, so what are the traits associated with your generation? That is Generation Me. The first trait is that the Generation Me rejects tradition. From wearing informal clothes to work, to sexual orientation, Generation Me is less interested in how it has been done in the past and more interested in what works best for them. So don't get surprised, my lords, when you see them putting on kundi shows, pedal pushers, balancing, deadlocks. They also call themselves, some of them call themselves bisexual. In fact, I received a letter recently, one of them petitioning that although he enrolled as a man, he should be called a woman. Now, we have started hearing concepts like legal rebels. You've heard this. Some voices are beginning to emerge criticizing wigs and gowns. In other words, this generation is trying to defy tradition. The second trait, these are studies by academicians, they are not mine. They believe in themselves. Members of Generation Me not only want to be wealthy and famous, they feel they deserve it. This has created problems for us in courts. A magistrate wants to drive a car similar to his colleagues in the corporate world, who were his or her classmates, forgetting that he or she is a lawyers overcharge their clients and sometimes cheat them to keep appearances. They compete to drive the best Mercedes-Benz in town. Some have fallen into deep debt. So that is the second characteristic. The third one, they are selfish, and Twenge refers to them as narcissistic. Don't take offense, not all of you. Members of Generation Me focus solely on themselves. They are driven by individual needs and desires. Twenge discusses the rise of the entitled students and the creation of informal and facilitated learning process. She argues that the current state of students' behavior in the classroom and on college campuses is direct outgrowth of students' belief that their opinions, regardless of merit, are valid. They are lazy, that is the other characteristic. But if they are students, they expect good grades and high praise. And their egos feel assaulted when either is missing. Yet they don't want to work hard. This explains the high failure rates we see sometimes in our institutions, and particularly this one. They are educated and know the importance of higher education. And many have gone to higher heights. It is now common to find, for example, a professor at the age of 30. However, the other characteristic is that they are unfiltered. A member of Generation Me is more likely to tell you exactly what he or she thinks of you, and is also likely to share every detail of his or her life with you, whether you are interested or not. That is why we have started hearing voices of some of them abusing judges. The old lawyers would abuse judges diplomatically. I will give you an example. There was an English judge. This was a rape case, and he had, so the lawyer was cross-examining a lady who had been raped, and he asked, the lawyer asked, were you putting on knickers? And then the English judge said, but Africans don't put on knickers. Then the lawyer, he couldn't tell the judge that, how did you know when you are white? So what did he say? He said, my lord, I'm always guided by your experience. That's how lawyers would abuse judges. But today we see lawyers coming up to abuse a judge, something alien to the ethical standards. They appear to shun hard work, and there is a sense of entitlement that says, I deserve a great job with a good salary, but I'm not sacrificing my personal life to do it. And I won't be subservient to my boss either. This is evident in how young generation of lawyers appear unprepared in court for their client representation. This is quite common these days. I remember when we were advocates, we would prepare. Some of these colleagues of yours here, your seniors who have been taking you through your course, they prepare very well. If you are going to meet Wambuga tomorrow in a case, you better read, because they prepare. But your generation, they come not even knowing the case. I remember in Masaka, the clerk read the case and the lawyer remained seated. Then I asked him, isn't this your case, counsel? He said, oh, my lord, yes, I think it is mine. The other characteristic is that they want to be seen as individuals, whether they are getting tattoos and piercing their ears, noses, wearing unusual clothing or hairstyles, or constantly seeking novel forms of entertainment. Generation members put a lot of effort into standing out from the crowd. This explains this type of behavior, like having tattoos and piercing their noses. And I'm sure I don't expect you to come with tattoos on your face in my court. They are good at technology. They simply adapt quickly to a world undergoing rapid technological change. However, technology has made them lazy. They cannot operate without technology, whether they are medical doctors or accountants adding simple figures. For lawyers without Google or Yuri, they cannot effectively prepare submissions in court. And this is reality. If you crossed Yuri today, you wouldn't have lawyers even appearing in the court. They would run away. They are more integrated. They don't believe in many previous held social stigmas related to race, gender, religion, sexual identity. Since Generation Me has limited connection to social norms, there is little to perpetuate previously held negative beliefs pertaining to women, ethnic minorities, and gays and lesbians and tribal leanings in Uganda. It is now quite common to find a young people crossing from Moroto to Kisoro for marriage. So that's a positive. Generation Me suffers from a greater number of mental, personal, social, communal, educational, and relationship problems than any other generation in the world. This is quite visible in many of the divorce causes we deal with in the courts of law. If you look at the reasons for divorce, you start to wonder how such flimsy grounds could lead to a breakdown in the marriage. The other characteristics is that they are prone to jump from job to job, whether they are domestic workers or corporate employees. They are unlikely to stick to the job for some time. In the old days, it was possible to have a maid raising children until they mature and also get married. Today, keeping a maid for more than a year is a luxury. And this also applies to the place of work. The other characteristic is that they want flexible work schedules and more me time on the job and nearly non-stop feedback and career advice from managers. Then the other characteristic is that they are coddled and pampered. Everything is done for them starting from nursery to university. We were used to read books at campus. Today, they want notes. When we were at campus, when we were doing law course, the law section, which was underground, was always full of lawyers. I don't remember any time when you would find a lawyer in his room. Today, they give them notes. There are even, some of them are a bit disillusional. It is now quite common to find institutions hiring counselors. Our generation never appeared before a counselor, and I'm sure, my lords, those of you who finished university, we did not have a counselor in the university. But when I was a lecturer, we had 3 counselors, and they were always busy. Some of them going there to say, you know, my boyfriend these days comes when he's annoyed, I don't know what to do, I'm failing to attend the classes because the boyfriend is, you know, things which are trivial, which we never used to consider very serious. But this generation, if you don't hire for them a counselor, you can see one of them coming to class naked. They are more civically and politically disengaged, more focused on materialistic values and less concerned about helping the larger community. And that is why you are referred to as Generation Me. So the me. Now, so with all that, I have talked about generations. You have had our generation. You have had the generation of your chairperson. And then we have had of a parent that is not giving your children fish, but teaching them how to fish. It takes resources, courage, and sacrifice to educate a child. The modern hustle and bustle of life, coupled with technological advancement and information overload, makes it challenging in the quest to be effective parents. You should consider yourselves achievers on this milestone of graduating your children. Parenting is a continuous process, and your journey of parenting has a long way to go. These young men and women will need to have wives after here. Your intervention in their quest for the next step in life will be very paramount. Modern parenting is a puzzle. The interaction between parents and children is increasingly shrinking due to the career advancement challenges. House helps know more about our children than we do know them. I therefore thank you and congratulate you for achieving this milestone. To all graduates, I'm aware that, so having understood these generations we are dealing with, what do we see in the practice in the courts today as a result of the shift in generations? Today, number one, we have law firms that are known only for crooked deals. When you are a thug and you want to do something bad, you run to that law firm. I don't even have to mention names. I'm sure the president, Uganda Society, can even list them on the fingertips. That's the situation we have today. Are you going to be part of that group of law firms that are thugs? Or are you going to define your clear path as a serious advocate who is not a thug? You can be popular in 2 ways. You can be a thug because they are popular thugs. Then they are also, you know, you can also be known for being a good person. If you run such a law firm, you need legal salvation. We have lawyers filing cases knowing that they have no case, but only to delay the inevitable, like recovery of loans or sale of mortgaged properties. A lawyer just comes to court. He knows the client has no case, but nevertheless he files. Are you ethical or a thug when you do that? Can't you tell your client that you have no case, and for that reason, do not waste my time? But nevertheless, you try. We have lawyers filing in multiple cases in different courts on the same subject matter, hence congesting the court system. You can imagine, he files the case in land division, files the case in family division, he files it in the commercial court. I'm trying to find a medicine for them. And one of the medicines will be to make you meet costs personally, and there is no lawyer who fears costs. There isn't a lawyer who doesn't fear costs personally, because they know the effect of costs on their clients. And that's where we want to head. You file multiple causes of action, I consolidate all of them to one judge and order you to pay costs in the rest of the courts. That's the only way we can stop that misbehavior. Then we have lack of preparation when representing clients in courts of law. These parents of ours put trust in you. They give you instructions thinking that they have instructed a serious human being. And then you start, the case is called, where is the counsel? Nowhere to be seen. You ask, where is your lawyer? My lord, I last talked to the lawyer yesterday and he told me he would be here. I don't know what has happened to him. I tried to call him, his phone is switched off. That is criminality, although we don't have a provision in the penal code. Taking clients' money and failing to represent them. This is quite common. I'm sure the president, law council, sorry, the chairperson of law council, you are going to have, when I look at the cause list, sometimes these days I get worried. These cases are dominating. That is very unethical to take a client's money and you fail to represent that client. Then we have another habit of receiving client's money and failing to remit to the client. This has become a daily song, and it is tied in with what I mentioned about some of the generations. You want to drive a Mercedes-Benz, you receive a client's money, instead of remitting it to the client, you buy a Mercedes-Benz and you start giving your client stories. We have not been paid, the other people we received the check but it bounced, when in actual sense you have the money. My Lord Chair, I think you need to start punishing lawyers seriously for this behavior. Even if it means banning them for life, I wouldn't mind. Number 7, paying bribes to judicial officers as well as other government agencies like land officials. A lawyer committing a deliberate crime, because you know, for bribery, both the giver and the receiver are all guilty. But you imagine the person who is supposed to uphold the law, you commit the offense knowingly, because at least for your mother and father who are not lawyers may give a bribe thinking that it is a facilitation. For you, you know it's a crime, but you go ahead and do it. Then we have another habit cropping up, that is disrespecting judicial officers and senior counsel at the bar and the bench. Some going to the extremes of abusing. When we were young advocates, you would never, even if a senior counsel appeared, you would tell the judge to stand over your matter and the senior counsel presents his matter. That is the respect we had for senior lawyers. But for you today, you even want to introduce the senior counsels at the bar. I've seen young lawyers saying, my lord, I'm counsel for the plaintiff, and you are introducing senior counsel? As if you never studied professional ethics. Then the disrespecting of judicial officers. When we were advocates, we used to respect judicial officers regardless of level, whether they were magistrate grade 2s, would go there and say, your worship, even when you see him taking a wrong direction, you would try to guide, you know, but you wouldn't say, my lord, you are wrong, or your worship, you have gone off the target. You would say, Your Worship, I wish to present this for your consideration and opinion. You are trying to guide so that but we would never abuse them. Then we have public generalism. This is becoming a menace. Lawyers giving interviews after court hearings to the press and discussing the merits of the case. Some of them even come with the press behind them. And then immediately after the case is adjourned, they go outside the court and then say, you see, my client is the ABC. I mean, that is very dangerous. We have the sub judice rule. Where did that rule go? We still live with it as advocates. Then we have also laziness of the judicial officers. Now, some of you are going to be judicial officers. If I'm going to supervise you, I'm not going to tolerate your laziness. A judicial officer is not at his station. A judicial officer, for a whole week, he's not at the station. The lawyers don't know. The public doesn't know. He doesn't write judgments. He or she doesn't write judgments. That is not what is expected of you after here. Then we have corruption of all forms by judicial officers and legal practitioners. I don't need to go into all forms. Then we have forum shopping. Lawyers, going to court and then telling registrars, give me that judge, or give me that registrar. What are you looking for? They are all judicial officers. Why do you want a particular one? Then we have discrediting decorum. Advocates dressing like disco jokers. Some of them shabby and unbothered. You know how you are supposed to dress. You can see how smart you are. When you come to court, that is how you are supposed to appear. But now if you come with the jeans and you see, the professionals have their own way of dressing. A disco joker will put on, something that will fit the profession, but not you. Then we have also a problem of bush lawyers. These are lawyers without a practice certificate, and they are beginning to represent clients. Some of them failed the LDC. They did not work hard. Some of them feared to come here, but they are going ahead to represent clients in the court. We are also trying to get medicine for such. Then we have lawyers who are working as bailiffs. They are running bailiff farms in which they sell properties themselves. You can imagine that criminality. You are not supposed to have a bailiff farm, but then you find you have your chambers here. The next door is for a bailiff who doesn't even know what he's doing, but the bailiff farm is yours. Then we have lawyers entering into illegal agreements with their clients. For example, in the army, a commander will always be obeyed regardless of whether the juniors regard him as less intelligent. Such is the etiquette that has made the armies in many parts over the world effective institutions over the years. Imagine a situation where during war a commander issues instructions to shoot, and then the debate ensures on who is right and who is wrong. The army can be wiped out in the argument. In the legal profession, respect for court orders is the norm. It does not matter whether the decision of the judge is right or wrong. That is why within the court system, there is a civic mechanism through appeal. Abusing judicial officers for making certain decisions is repugnant and has no place in the judicial system. Whether you belong to the last letter of the alphabet as a generation, you must respect court decisions. To do otherwise would be a recipe for anarchy. We should respect judges and other judicial officers. However, like I have always stated, respect is earned. It cannot be demanded. If you are a judicial officer that takes bribes and you are incompetent, do not expect respect from advocates. If you are a senior counsel who is the thug, you can only be respected as a senior thug. As graduates from LDC, as graduates from LDC, what will save you is the following, and as I conclude. The ability to communicate eloquently and articulately is one of the most important skills you can have as a lawyer. You see, convincing a judge takes just a few jargons, and the judge thinks you are right. Remember, you are representing your client. Your role is to make sure that your client succeeds. Yeah, so what will help you is your ability to communicate. In no way is a lawyer's job an easy one. It is one of the most stressful careers you can opt for. Pressure is your password. You may have to appear in 4 courts on the same day. And these are realities because we face them. So you must prepare all the time. In the field of law, there is no better learning than to seek help from your seniors. It is vital to identify potential mentors early on and pursue them. They will be able to guide and advise you and help you to learn the ropes efficiently. So get a mentor. This journey is not something you can maneuver on your own. Be confident. You are not only a public speaker but a mentor and a therapist and a guide for your client. If you do not portray self-confidence, there is no reason for your client or even the judge to trust your words. Now you imagine when you are representing a client and they ask you questions and you are keeping quiet. The client will think that he has lost the case even before you proceed. So you must be confident. Even if you don't know what to say, simply argue. That is how you give confidence to your client. Now remember, a settlement is better than a good trial. If you are lucky that someone proposes a settlement, go for it. Because a full trial, you may actually not finish it. Your client can die in the process. Or anything can happen. Prepare and over-prepare. I don't need to emphasize that. You'll never find a case that can't be lost. But not every case can be won. So now, when you are talking to your client, I know you don't tell your client that this one is a must-win. Because every case can be lost, even the one you think you are going to win. So just know that. Know how and when a case should be settled. Never be overly optimistic in reports to your clients. Be honest and accurate, but clients will be less concerned about unexpected good results than the failure to achieve overly optimistic goals. So when you have told your client that this is a 50-50 case, when you lose, so be it. When you win, so be it. But if you say we are winning 100% and you lose, then that's when they start alleging certain things. Be trustworthy. Be the kind of a lawyer that you want to hire. Now you imagine if you're looking for a lawyer in the legal profession to represent you. You would want the best. Now be that lawyer. Leave the lawyer in you at the office. Now if you want to be a lawyer at home, and especially if you are married to a fellow lawyer and there is no judge in the house, then you will always have a chaotic courtroom. Lastly, disagree without being disagreeable. As I conclude, let me conclude by thanking the management of Law Development Center for continuously investing in creating an enabling environment for serene learning. I take note of the infrastructure developments at the regional campuses of Kampala, Mbarara, and Lira, computerization of operations, especially online teaching, improved remuneration of staff, and embracing legal aid service provision for the indigent and disadvantaged in society. With these and other innovations, you are undertaking the future of the Law Development Center, and legal training looks very bright. So for the graduates today, I look forward to meeting you both in the courtroom as advocates or as my staff at the bar, at the bench. I wish all graduates prosperous careers. Thank you for listening to me for God and my country.
Thank you so much, my Lord, our guest of honor, for those words of wisdom. They are really so insightful that
That's from the 1st up to the 20th. Irego Jane Francis.